Many unspoken horrors exist within families, and there is something real strange about the Johnsons. This is a short film, but it packs a punch. I'm Micah, a licensed therapist, and here we like to talk about horror and mental health. Today's film is about a seemingly normal family with a very disturbing secret. Not a lot surprises me, but this one got me. I went into it blind, not knowing anything about it. First, let's recap the movie. So a father walks in on his son masturbating. Awkward. He realizes what's going on, exits, re-enters, and tries to have a conversation with him, saying, hey, this is a normal thing. Uncomfortable to talk about, but normal. Sex-positive parenting isn't a bad thing, but I was having real mixed feelings about this part of the story. So I was like, what's gonna happen? After this awkward conversation is over, we remember that the son was looking at a picture when his dad walked in and quickly hid the picture. When the dad leaves, we get to see what the picture was of. I did not expect it to be his father, but it was. Yes, his father. And the tone for the movie has been set. Then we move forward with a creepy transition scene of a family portrait being taken. And the boy won't stop looking back up at his dad, and his mom keeps like adjusting his head to be like, stop it. Look forward. We're taking a picture. So then we fast forward 14 years to the boy's wedding. So he's an adult now. And while they're taking their family wedding pictures, son grabs his dad's butt. So much wrong. So this is where we learn that there has been an evolution of their relationship. During the wedding reception is when mom learns about this secret, allegedly. I feel like there was probably some signs, and she indicates that there was some clues beforehand. So she can't deny that something wrong is going on at this point, because she peeks through a fence and sees some sexual activity happening. She is horrified, but you can see her expression shift from the horror of what she's just seen to deciding, I'm going to pretend like I didn't see that. I'm going to sweep this under the rug and we're going to put on our fake smile and move right along. That is one thing I have a very hard time with, but okay. So I will say that the dad doesn't seem happy that this is happening and appears to be more of the victim than the son, when in reality, it's usually the other way around. I specialize in trauma. As you can imagine, I've heard some shit, but I have so many questions about this. Like, how the fuck did this happen? It's one of those things that I want to know more details of, but also don't. And we never officially learn these details, so it's probably better that way. Anyway, we learn that dad is a poet, and he wrote a story about the relationship that's named Cocoon Man, which is a very telling title, because he probably feels very trapped and is waiting for a new version of himself to emerge. So dad tries to share this with his wife. He's trying to tell her what's going on and places it under her pillow, but son finds it and confronts his dad in a very awkward, uncomfortable conversation where dad does seem very distressed and son is just cold and very serious. And he basically threatens him and says, if you decide to do anything else like this again, then we're gonna have problems. We progress to a party being held at the parents' house for New Year's Eve. We see the son making out with his wife while keeping an eye on his dad. The party ends and the son tells his wife, I'm gonna help my parents clean up. Right. Dad is in the tub listening to his self-help tape, and son tries to open the door, which is locked, and does not like this. He literally states, you know how I feel about locked doors, and breaks the door open. Dad is screaming through the course of the scene, and this is implying that there is something very bad happening. So while this is happening, mom's in another room watching TV and pretends like she can't hear it. Here we go. Same behavior as when she actually for sure figured out something was happening. She even turns the volume up so she can pretend like it's not happening. Your husband is being assaulted in the other room by your child. I can't pretend to know how it would feel to be in this situation, but I can say I would not react the way this mom has. So in the next scene, son is crawling out of the tub where he was with his dad. His dad seems very defeated and distressed, later lies down in bed next to his wife, and we see that the wife has been awake this whole time. It just pretends it didn't happen. The next day, he pulls out a copy of the manuscript of the story from under some floorboards where he has hidden it from his son and tries to leave. So he's clearly trying to release this information. It seems like he wants this to stop, regardless of how it started, that he does not want to continue. He goes downstairs, and there's his son sitting there, has a conversation with him.
Am I just this abusive monster and you're some sad, helpless victim? Or does it take two to tango? Because I think it does. And if I've done anything, you've done it with me. Like you're fucking at me! Everything I've ever done has been for you and for you and for you, and to what end? I didn't ask for this. This is your thing, something you started.
See a lot of manipulation and gaslighting from the son at this point. Tells his dad it's just love.
But you are not just my father. You're my friend. You're my best friend. And maybe we can just agree that that's a beautiful thing and not something to be perverted and corrupted and mutilated by your warped and confused conscience. It's just love, Dad.
So Dad runs out the door with the manuscript to try to escape and is immediately hit by a van. Son runs out and is devastated and falls down on his dad's body, crying and yelling at his mother, and blaming her for the end result. We move forward to the father's funeral, where the mother is clearly dissociated. It seems like she's completely disconnected from this experience, like she just lost her husband, and it's pretty heavily on the son that this happened. Of course, it was an accident. This all would not have transpired had this relationship not developed between them, and the father allowing the son to have him kind of in his clutches. Want to acknowledge that this couldn't have happened without some participation. There was something there. There was something passive about the dad. There was some shit boundaries. Like, the son is awful, but this is not all on him. Should not have assaulted his dad. What the fuck? And son is genuinely grieving. And despite being pretty awful, he is a human, just a really messed up human. And again, we can't determine how everything got this way based on the information we have, but there is more to this story. Mom decides she's going to confront son. She's going to ask him some questions. She asks him, why was your father crying when he brought you home from prom? So here we can assume that this may have started in high school, which probably would have been a little bit after the whole beginning scene. Maybe at that point, son was strong enough to overpower him, and he just didn't want to have his son face any consequences and just allowed it. But I'm confused. She moves on to tell son that he was crying and wouldn't look at me and locked himself in the bathroom and cried all night. And he starts pulling his tactics on his mom. It's like, I don't remember that. She's screaming at him. Is that when it started? Calls him a monster. And then he blames her for his death. Basically saying, like, if you'd been a better wife, this wouldn't have happened. So they start hitting each other and fighting, and she ends up stabbing him, and he tries to push her into a fire in the fireplace, and she attacks him with a fire poker and kills him violently. She burns the manuscript while sobbing, and the movie's over. So there's a lot contained within this very short film. Most often the perpetrator is more in a power role, authority role, such as a parent. This situation, it seems to be reversed. It's a little more complicated than that, but on the surface, that's what we're looking at. And generally, someone becomes very abusive to exert power. It's not usually as much about the sex. Usually, this kind of behavior exhibited by the son is learned. It was normalized in some capacity, either like blurred sexual boundaries or abuse in some capacity that happened to the son. I think this specific story makes it scarier in some ways because it's portrayed as if it just kind of came from nowhere, which real life doesn't really work that way. It seems unlikely that the father was so unwilling throughout the course of this. Again, maybe he got big enough that he was able to overpower him, and father just didn't take any action past that. Now, there are situations where an adult child is abusive towards their parents, often takes advantage of them financially or emotionally, draining them. And a lot of this results from poor parenting early on, meaning that there were consequences that were not enforced. The child was likely overprotected and bailed out of a lot of situations that they would have faced some consequences for. Makes sense for this. If he overpowered his dad, did some things, and nobody did anything about it and just kept letting it happen, evolved into what it is. The perfect recipe of traits and environment can create some messes, let me tell you. I think that the likelihood of generational trauma is high in this situation. Again, these behaviors don't come from nowhere and are passed down from generation to generation until someone stops the cycle. All right, we're going to look at family member to family member. First, father. So he is demonstrating some psychological defense mechanisms. He is in the midst of intense denial and avoidance of addressing the situation. This is a common defense mechanism. People who take this route often suppress uncomfortable truths to avoid dealing with them. Doesn't work, always comes back. Next, mom. Her role is one that does happen in some families in cases of abuse. Someone turns a blind eye and pretends it's not happening. That, in the moment, feels easier to them than actually addressing it. For me personally, it's hard for me to feel a lot of sympathy for this person in this role. You can do better. I do want to acknowledge that sometimes there are complex situations where someone is fearful of the perpetrator. It is only when the husband dies that she decides to intervene. That's too late. Of course, the abuse itself should have never happened, but we can't pretend you aren't an accomplice if you know about it and you don't do do anything. Finally, the son. The son exhibits some behavior that align with antisocial or narcissistic behaviors. Again, doesn't come from nowhere, and is a combination of nurture versus nature. He doesn't seem to have a whole lot of empathy and is very manipulative and uses tactics like gaslighting to control others. Treats his father like an object that's there to satisfy his needs. Dude needed intervention a long time ago for these behaviors. This movie is troubling. I would say that there are more emotionally disturbing movies, but not many that lack the component of being visually graphic. And I think there's something interesting about doing so much with so little. Even if you haven't had this experience, how many of us have dysfunctional or toxic dynamics in our family that we don't confront or talk about? It may not be this bad, but I think that the horror in The Strange Thing About the Johnsons is so unsettling because there's some reality there. Ultimately, the son is painted as the villain, and of course his actions and behavior are reprehensible. But the only thing about family issues is it's never just one person responsible for the dysfunction, whether that be from direct action or inaction. Choice to avoid and deny and pretend like it's not happening. The father and mother contributed to this mess. Not victim blaming. This shouldn't have happened this way. But it's also about understanding how something like this could happen. This film uses real human emotions, relationships, and dysfunction to create the psychological horror, which is sometimes more terrifying than your traditional horror movie monsters and supernatural shit. Tell me about what you think about The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. If you have had some sort of sexual abuse or trauma in your history, definitely get some help. I've included a couple of resources in the description.